we have opened up our design. We've taken some time, we've cleaned it up. You can see I have not cleaned mine up as well as I hope you will. And I'm going to close these so that we can pull these all up. But we've got a nice grayscale. I need to make you guys smaller. If you do have a question, just raise your hand digitally because I will not be able to see you. In our assignment, you are asked to choose a color scheme. And so we're going to be taking and applying an expressive color scheme to yours, but we're going to be using some of the built-in tools that we talked a little bit about in Illustrator. So I'm going to go up to Window. I want to pull down Color Themes palette, and we're also going to pull down swatches if you don't have swatches already open over here. So, and make sure you put it over here to swatches. So I want to have those two windows open as we are doing this activity today. All right. Just as a reminder about how the color theme palette over here works, you're going to want to start off, you can pick any color to start with, but you're going to want to choose a rule. And just as a review, anybody recall what analogous means? Y'all can just shout it out.
It means where like the colors are like close together.
They're next to each other on the color wheel. So very good. So if I've got green as my primary color, you can see that all of my colors are kind of right next to that. So if I got green, if I've got green, I'll have blue and a little bit of yellow, and that kind of makes up that. The next color theme is monochromatic, which I think is pretty straightforward. It's one hue and then tints and shades of that. I will say monochromatic actually works pretty well for this activity. So that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind. Triad, what's a triad?
Choosing 3 points.
3 that are apart.
Excellent. 3 colors that are equidistant apart on the color wheel. So you have things like a primary triad, which is, red, yellow, and blue. This is a lovely triad to work with. And then you also have secondary triad, which is actually my favorite, which is orange, green, and purple. So those are all good triads and things to do. It's complementary. Anybody remember what that is?
Colors on the opposite sides of the color wheel.
Perfect, opposites, right. So you're going to end up with blues and oranges, or let's see if I can rotate. Is that the right one? Yeah. Yellows and purples. So it's quite fun to work with complements. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to go with a complementary color scheme on this. All right, cool. One thing you're going to want as you're playing around with this is you're going to want to selectively pick out the colors and adjust them. You need to have color values that range from a dark to a light. You want to ultimately have several colors that line up with that. So if all your colors are dark, this isn't going to work. If all your colors are light, this isn't going to work. You need to try to line up your colors and make sure you're putting together some colors that have a range of colors. So if this is going to be my dark color here, I'll go ahead and take my slider and slide that on down and make it pretty dark. If this is going to be my next darkest, I might darken it up just a little bit more. This will be my next one. So, oh, hello. So you want to kind of just tweak. Basically, you're tweaking your color so that you get a nice range of values as well. I'm going to take that pink, and I can't make it any lighter than that. Can I make this green any lighter? Make this green a little bit lighter. There we go. Cool. So once you have your color scheme, and the really cool part about this, guys, is that you can make a whole bunch of different color swatches. And I encourage you to do so because it's going to allow you to experiment. One of the things that I like about digital art is that it's so easy to change things like colors. In a painting, you couldn't do that. Don't fall asleep, Kareem. I can see you're dozing already. Slap yourself. So make sure that you build a couple of these color schemes so you can experiment. I'm going to go ahead, and this little button right here is awesome. it's add to swatches. Boom. And when I do that, you'll see that it actually adds that color scheme right there into my swatch palette. And that's good. Yes.
How do you add it to swatches?
Great question. That little button right there, that's got a little plus by it.
Oh.
Add to swatches.
Okay.
Easy peasy. And I'm going to go ahead just for fun and make another one, just a random one. I'll do analogous. Analogous is kind of nice. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Push my values around a little bit more. Make my purples a little bit darker. And kind of lighten this guy up. Lights. And I'll lighten this guy up. Cool. And, all right, so you want to range. And also I'll add that to my swatch. So I've added it over here. Cool. All right, so now what are we going to do with this? This is where it gets super fun. So I'm going to turn that off. I've already made all my edits. I've cleaned it up, made it nice and tight. What I like to do, generally speaking, is I want to select all. So I'm just going to Command A, but I want to make sure not to grab the background. We're going to do something different in the background. Hopefully your background's slightly different shape. If it's not, this could be problematic. So if it's a real pain, don't worry about it. But I'm going to go ahead and hold down my Shift key and click, and you'll see, oops, that didn't work. Let's try that again. All right. Select all. And maybe I'll take my direct tool. I think I may still have these all grouped together. And I'm going to hold down my Control key and unselect. Nope. Shift. There we go. Cool. So I've just got all of my grayscale selected, none of my white background. So again, just how I did that, I did select all. I took my direct select tool, held down Shift, and then selected that back. All right. Now what's really cool, when we have that selected over here in our properties bar, all the way down here, there's this little guy that says Recolor. Check this out. When I click this, I get another little bar that pops up. Move my swatches over here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay. And this is where it gets quite fun. If you go to Color Library and then Color Group, all of the ones that you have added to your swatches, all the color themes that you did now show up here. And when I click on this, it's going to auto-populate them into here. And I'll do it again. Now, don't panic because some of these look a little weird. My color theme. Okay, so it's dropping these in here. In this case, it looks like it's not pulling any of the black in. All right. Now, there is advanced options, which you're going to want to probably click in. Oh, one thing not to do. You do not want to change the color order because ultimately you want the color order to match up with the values in the document. So you don't want to change, you do not want to click on these two buttons because that is really bad. You get really cool effects, but you're not going to get what you want. So I'm going to click up Open Advanced Options. And with this, what you can see is I've got my colors aligned with it. So for example, it's got my dark purple here lined up with white. So that's no good. We want this purple lined up with our dark color up here. So I think if I can drag, I think I can drag that guy down here with the purple. There we go. So now do you see how that's starting to visually make more sense? What I just did? All right, I'm going to keep going since there's dead silence. So we're trying to match the value of the color we picked because remember we adjusted them so we'd have a couple of nice darks, a couple of nice lights. And so we want those to line up. I'm going to pull this pink here, which is my lightest color. I want that to tie in with my whites. Actually, let's see what happens if I do that. Pink. It's not going to actually make too much difference because we don't have white. And then I want to pull in, that actually looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And then black. And I guess I could even pull this black in here if I wanted to. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll pull that down. And then I'm going to drag this up here to that guy. And then I'm going to drag that black right there. So what we should end up with is something that looks pretty close to the values that we've got lined up in our original grayscale. If this is still not looking 100% right to me, and that may mean that I've got to go in and adjust and tweak these values over here. So let's see if I can adjust that a little bit more. I may not be able to adjust it after the fact. That looks better. Although I'm starting to get some gray coming back in here, which is unfortunate. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to start over. So I've got my selection. I click on properties. I hit recolor. I choose color group. I'll try this one this time. All right, that's pretty good. Lines up pretty nicely. Click on advanced options and see, make sure that generally speaking, my darks are lined up with my darks. I still ended up with my my gray reading for this purple here, which is still pretty good. I could probably switch my pink and green here. Let's see what happens if I switch that. I don't know if that improved it or not. And so you want to play around with this until you get something that you like, but you end up with that nice range of values from that light to dark, similar to how we have with our grayscale. I'm going to do one more time just for kicks. Select all. I don't know if I actually selected all. 50, get rid of the backgrounds, recolor, color group. Option.
That eye, though, the left eye, it looks so weird in
It
every
does
single one
look,
of these.
and that's where, again, if the values aren't lining up right, and it's because I've got this salmon color as a really dark, and I've got my purple as the whites. So I really have to kind of go in here and take this guy and switch it up with that. So let's see if we do that, what happens. There we go. That's better. I'm gonna stick with that and call it a day. So you're gonna want, and the nice thing is, this is the only thing we're doing today is we're really just experimenting with this option. I see we have a chat question here. We're able to keep cleaning up the shapes. Heck yes, and I encourage you to do so. And you may actually want to do it ahead of time but that's up to you. But yes, Lexi, her question was, are we able to keep cleaning up the shapes after adding the colors? And the answer is yes. Please do so. I just find it's easier to do it. It's easier, generally speaking, to clean them up before you get to this stage, because at this point we're kind of in the I don't want to say wrap up stage. In the background, what I'm going to recommend you guys use is some kind of a gradient. And you can actually pull from these same colors that you've got here if you like. So I'm pulling my swatch window again, and I want to show you how to do that real quick. Then I'll let you guys get to it. I'm going to work in the background. So I'm going to take my direct select tool, choose my background shape here. If you double click on the gradient tool, you get the gradient window. All right. And you have a couple different types of gradients you can choose from. You can have a linear gradient, or you can have a radial gradient. And down here, we've got our gradient slider, which we can click on. Generally speaking, with the gradient tool, you can come in and basically, oh, is it going to be stupid now? So you have to make sure you have your gradient set on the fill. Right now, I have it on my stroke is actually marked as the gradient. So I'm going to switch that out. And so I've got my directional gradient. I should be able to adjust this. So I can adjust the angle here. Although it's not working. Because I have to select, I keep forgetting, you have to select the actual fill. My bad, guys. I have to select the fill down here. And now I can take that little guy and I can rotate that gradient, change it up. I find it maybe a little bit easier just to do it right up here in the gradient box. I want it to be 90 degrees like that. That's kind of cool. You can also choose to do a radial gradient, which is kind of nice and fun. And I might change my colors though. And so when you click on the color here, you can go right over here and do, okay, I want it to be pink. And I want this color here to be that hot pink. I don't like that. How about that? Purple. Oh, that's kind of nice. Okay, cool. And so you can also move the center of your gradient box around. Oops. My gradient tool. Should be able to click on that and move it around. There we go. So if you want it to be off center like that, you could do that. But we want to try to play around with different types of gradients to find out what's going to work best in your design. And again, you have lots of options for the colors. You can change those out. I encourage you to keep it in the same color scheme. I think that would be probably prudent to do. That's kind of neat. Ooh, I like that. But that is basically it for today, guys. Your goal is to pick your color scheme, be thoughtful about which color rule you use, number one. You want to add those to your swatches. Then you're going to come over to the properties bar and over here, select just the gray and then do the recoloring. You probably want to get into the advanced to tweak it a little bit so that your values match up with what you've got. And again, experiment. Make sure you save as you go, but you can always save as so that if you have one design you like better than the other, you can actually do multiple versions of these, which I think is quite fun. And then experiment with different gradients in the background to see what's going to work well for you. I'm going to get rid of, and just make sure you click on the fill. That's the part where you need to have it happening, not on the stroke. All right. So I'm going to open it up to questions at this point. Go ahead.
And what if we wanted to like do the opposite colors of the original?
You could do that. You could do, and I would just experiment with it.
Like completely the opposite side of the color wheel.
You could. So if you wanted to do that, experiment and see what you can make happen. As long as so you would be like doing some kind of complementary color scheme. You just want to be conscious of the overall color scheme of the piece. That would be my only, slight warning about that. Something to be aware of. And then beyond that, like Lexi said, just getting in and really continuing the process that we started last week of just tightening these things up, cleaning up any of the edges, making sure you don't have any gaps showing between your shapes and stuff like that. And I think that's it. Other questions? Lexi has raised her hand. Yes, Lexi.
You mentioned like some sort of like cultural icon or something that we are working on. Like is that part of this project or?
Yes, what we're going to do, if you actually look at some of Shepard Fairey's work, let's see if I can quickly switch over there to Shepard. Oh, I spelled it wrong. I did. Images. If you look at a lot of his work, you will see, I don't know if y'all can see or not, it's pretty small. God, I hate Google Image sometimes when it does that. But like right over here where there's this layer of this kind of repeating, oscillating, ripply patterns and stuff like that, he will do these very subtle patterns that are almost invisible, but actually add a lot of texture. Here, you can see it better in this. It'll add a lot of texture into these patterns that make that just make the work so much more interesting than if it's a solid, flat, graphic shape. And so I'm not sure whether I'm going to be doing this with Photoshop or with Illustrator. I'm still trying to decide which way works best. You know, he actually, a lot of times he will do this by collaging patterned paper, like wallpaper samples or screen printed stuff in the background, and then making the art on top of that and letting parts of it show through. We're going to do it digitally. But what it's going to do is add a richness to the image that does not exist if it's just straight up digital. So that's why we're making that pattern, is we're going to be incorporating that in a subtle way into our final design.
Gotcha.
It's going to make them more interesting, ultimately, is the goal. Good question. Other questions? I will say too, if you have like one particular shape that's bugging you, you can also go in with, once you have your swatches, which again, I seem to have closed. Where are you, swatches? You can literally go into individual shapes. And if you want to darken something or lighten something, you can go in on that shape. Make that color selection and then change it to a slightly different shade. So if you can't seem to get it to work in terms of the value, you can make those fine-tune adjustments as well. I'm okay with that.
Coach Hall, I have a question. So
Yeah.
this is what I sent you the email about.
Yeah.
So in my picture, like my hair is kind of like all over. And like when I tried simplifying my hair, it didn't look like hair anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So
you will want to, you will probably want to keep the detail at that point. Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone else asked that question last week. You know, where you can simplify, do so, you know, but don't oversimplify to the point where you can't tell what the heck's going on. If I oversimplified my hat texture, you couldn't tell that it was a hat. I'm not sure you can tell it's a hat now, but okay. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to let you have studio time. I am here. So if you want to screen share and ask me questions or whatnot, but we're cleaning up our images still. If you haven't finished doing that, we are building our color schemes, applying those. We're adding some kind of a gradient, either a linear gradient or a circular radial gradient to the background.